Undersea cables. You may have heard of these from somewhere. If you haven't, here's some pictures to give you a good idea of what they look like. They look pretty lonely down there all on their own. I guess they have the fish to keep them company. Also known as submarine telecommunications cables, these were first started being constructed in the 1850s, and they span the seabed in waters all across the world. But what do they actually do, and what makes them so important in the modern world? Well, let's start by taking a closer look at where they actually came from, and who came up with the idea of undersea cables. Well, in 1839, William Cooke, an English inventor, and Charles Wheatstone, an English inventor and physicist, introduced their working telegraph. A telegraph was one of the earliest technologies to send messages over a long distance, not by mail or horseback, but by electricity. It used a system of dots and dashes, known as Morse code, to send pulses through a wire. It wasn't instant messaging like today, but for back then it was revolutionary. This sparked the idea of marine cabling being a possible future. But this was just an idea. It didn't actually become a thing until 1842, where an inventor named Samuel Morse submerged an insulated wire in the water in New York Harbor and telegraphed through it. This proved that the idea was possible underwater. Then, in August 1850, the first commercial undersea cable was laid across the English Channel and had a goal to connect England and France. But this attempt wasn't successful, as it was simply a copper wire on the ocean with only one layer of protection. This one layer was gutta percha, which was a waterproof sap from Malaysian trees, and it was used to insulate and protect wires from seawater. This material, that was discovered by William Montgomery, was key to the development of submarine communications cables. Unfortunately, even with gutta percha, this wire still just had way too many problems. Most of them just being protection issues, and it being damaged by fishermen, and it didn't really work. But in September 1851, they tried again, submerging a new protected cable through the English Channel, and this time it worked perfectly. Then in 1853, more cables were laid. They linked parts of Great Britain with Ireland, Belgium, and the Netherlands, as well as the Danish Straits. Then in late 1853, a war broke out. This was known as the Crimean War, and telegraphy played a huge role in this one, because it allowed people to communicate even faster than before, and making them even more prepared. This made the concept of undersea cables even more enticing, as seeing them perform so well in this war made them very appealing. This is cool and all, but people started thinking bigger, better. What if we could lay a cable across the Atlantic Ocean? Well, this was first attempted in 1858, but there were a few problems. Technology at the time wasn't really capable of supporting the project. The cable was plagued with problems, and it was only in operation for about a month. However, the idea of a transatlantic cable was soon going to be a reality, because in 1865, the SS Great Eastern, which was and still is today the world's largest steamship, successfully laid a transatlantic cable. Its success was in large part due to better protection, as well as technology at the time being more advanced than before. Trans-Pacific cables didn't exist until much later though. They started being laid in 1902 and 1903, and they connected many countries. Cables were laid in parts of India, Singapore, East Asia, and Australia. It basically started moving to places other than Europe, and they mostly connected parts of Canada and the US to countries in Asia, sort of completing the worldwide grid in a way. Obviously, the earliest versions of these cables had problems, and many of them have gotten replaced over the years. Around this time, more transatlantic cables were constructed as well. Later in the 1980s, optical fiber cables, or fiber optics, were invented, which is a topic that could probably use its own video, but I'll give a quick explanation here. Fiber optics were wires that use thin flexible fibers of glass or other transparent materials to transmit data as light signals, effectively making them transfer data at the speed of light. This was super important for the development of marine cables, as this allowed them to be much longer and transfer data even faster. The first transatlantic telephone cable to use fiber optics was TAT-8, and it worked so well that they continued to use fiber optics for other transatlantic and trans-Pacific cables. Then in 1997, the construction of CME-3 begun. CME-3 was and still is to this day the longest underwater cable, being 39,000 kilometers long. Its construction was possible in part due to the invention of fiber optics, but it was also due to other advancements in the world of technology, like for example, more advanced wire protection methods. Here's a map of all the submarine cables of 2025, and here is CME-3, so you can see how long it really is compared to the others. So that's where they came from, but what do they do, and what makes them so important? Well, before we talk about that, you're watching Future Frame. I do weekly tech breakdowns of hidden technology or technology that you use in your everyday life. Just stuff that's underappreciated. I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed this video, as it helps support the channel. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Undersea cables are really important because they're essentially the backbone of internet today. Despite everybody talking about satellites and wireless technology, over 95% of international data, from emails to video calls to financial transactions to streaming, travel through submarine cables. Think about it. When you send a message to someone in another country, it doesn't fly through space. It just dives deep underwater from your country to theirs. These cables connect continents with speed and reliability that satellites can't really match. Why not just use satellites? Well, even though satellites are great for remote areas, they have a higher latency and limited bandwidth. Cables are faster, cheaper per bit, and more stable, which is crucial for things like international finance, where milliseconds can matter. But laying a cable across an ocean isn't easy. These cables can be thousands of kilometers long and have to withstand the pressure of the ocean as well as ocean currents, and even sometimes shark bites. Yes, shark bites. Although that's a rare thing now thanks to better shielding on the cables. To keep them safe, they're often buried beneath the seabed near shorelines, and they're monitored 24/7. Still, they can get damaged, usually by sharks, as we've seen, or by ship anchors, underwater landslides, or even certain techniques of fishing. When this happens, usually specialized repair ships are dispatched, sometimes to depths of over 8,000 meters, just to fix them. Today, there's over 500 active cables crisscrossing the ocean floor. They're managed by companies, governments, and even some of them managed by tech giants like Google or Facebook. And with growing demand for data from cloud services, AI, remote work, streaming, new cables are being planned all the time. They're not just wires anymore, they're strategic assets. Some people call them the oil pipelines of the digital age, and it's easy to see why. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching this video. I may have butchered some pronunciations in this video, so I'm sorry about that. Anyways, maybe you consider watching some of my other content. That's all for this week. Peace.